You've probably done it without thinking. You pull out your phone, you tap. A small vibration. A soft beep, payment complete. No cash, no card swipe, no PIN. It feels simple, harmless, convenient. But here's the part no one ever told you. Tap to Pay was never designed for shopping. In fact, the technology behind it existed long before checkout counters, coffee shops, or smartphones. It wasn't created to speed up transactions or make life easier. It was created to control access, identify objects instantly, and decide who or what was allowed through a system. What you're using today as NFC was born out of something far more serious. Much more deliberate. And once you see where it really came from, you'll never look at that harmless tap the same way again. Long before NFC stood for near-field communication, it was part of a quiet problem engineers and governments were trying to solve. How do you identify something instantly without physical contact? In the middle of the 20th century, this wasn't about convenience, it was about security. Military bases needed a way to tell friend from intruder. Industrial facilities needed systems that could track tools, equipment, and even people without slowing everything down. Barcodes helped, but they required line of sight. Magnetic stripes could fail. Keys could be stolen. So engineers began working on something invisible. A system where one object could silently ask another object a question and get an answer instantly. No buttons, no screens, no user interaction, just proximity. The earliest versions appeared in the 1000, 940 seconds, and 50 seconds, hidden inside radar projects and identification systems. During World War II, similar principles were used in aircraft identification rudimentary systems that allowed friendly planes to respond to radio signals while enemy aircraft stayed silent. This wasn't communication like we think of it today. It was interrogation. Are you allowed here? Are you recognized? Are you trusted? By the 1970 seconds, this idea evolved into radio frequency identification RFID, tiny chips that could carry identifiers and respond when energized by a reader. Initially, these chips were large, expensive, and fragile. They were used in supply chains, livestock tracking, and secure facilities. Not for people. Certainly not for payments. But then, something interesting happened. Engineers realized that if you made RFID short range enough, so short it only worked within a few centimeters, it became extremely precise, controlled, predictable. Two objects would have to be almost touching for data to pass between them. That limitation wasn't a flaw. It was the entire point. This is where NFC began to take shape. Near-field communication wasn't built to broadcast information into the world. It was built to create a tiny, controlled bubble where data could pass only when two things were intentionally brought together. Tap, confirm, access granted, and access is the key word here. Before NFC ever touched money, it was used for doors, badges, transit systems, and identification cards. Employees tapped into buildings, travelers tapped through subway gates, staff tapped into restricted rooms. You didn't just prove that you had something. You proved you belonged. Money came much later, almost as an afterthought. In the early 2000s, tech companies and banks began experimenting with NFC for payments. Not because it was ideal for commerce, but because it was already trusted, already hardened, already proven in systems where failure wasn't an option. Think about that. When something is secure enough for military installations, government buildings, and mass transit systems selling coffee with it, becomes easy. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. When NFC moved into consumer devices, it didn't lose its original purpose. It was simply repackaged. The same tap that opens a secure door can unlock a phone. The same signal that validates a badge can authorize a transaction. The same system that checks identity can move money. Convenience wasn't the goal. Compatibility was. When smartphones adopted NFC, they didn't invent a new system. They embedded themselves into an existing access infrastructure. Your phone became a badge, a key, a token, and eventually a wallet. Tap to Pay feels modern, but its logic is old, very old. A reader sends out a short-range signal. Your device responds with a credential. The system decides what you're allowed to do, buy, enter, pass through, or be denied. That's why NFC doesn't behave like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. It doesn't stay on in the same way. It waits, dormant, silent, until it's close enough to matter. That design makes it feel safer, more controlled. And that feeling is intentional. Because NFC was never meant to replace cash. It was meant to replace trust. When you tap to pay, you're not proving who you are. You're proving that your device is valid, your credentials are intact, and the system recognizes you as authorized. You don't show ID. You don't speak. You don't interact. The system already knows. And this is where the mystery deepens. NFC doesn't just enable payments, it creates an ecosystem of permissions. Transit systems, hotels, offices, cars, passports, and even medical devices use variations of the same logic. Tap once, and you move through the world almost frictionlessly. But friction was the only thing that made older systems visible. Cash had weight. Cards had motion. Receipts left paper trails you could see. NFC made everything silent. And when systems become silent, they fade into the background until we stop thinking about them altogether. That's why tap to pay spread so fast. Not because it was flashy, but because it was invisible. People didn't adopt it, they accepted it. There was no big announcement, no dramatic shift. One day, terminals started working with a tap. Phones supported it. Cards quietly gained NFC chips. Suddenly, tapping was normal. But the power of NFC isn't in the tap. It's in what happens behind it. Every interaction is logged. Every token is inspected. Every transaction passes through layers of verification. Not just financial behavioral. Where, when, how often. NFC doesn't need your location services to know patterns. It doesn't need GPS to observe habits. It simply waits for you to come close enough to matter. And you always do. To your phone, to terminals, to gates, to devices. What began as a secure identification method became a quiet interface between humans and systems, one that doesn't ask permission, it assumes cooperation. That's why NFC is so trusted and so underestimated. It doesn't feel invasive because it doesn't chase you. It waits for you. And that design choice makes it one of the most powerful everyday technologies ever deployed. Tap to Pay wasn't built for shopping. Shopping just turned out to be the most acceptable way to introduce it into daily life. Because once people are comfortable tapping for coffee, it's easier to tap for everything else. Entry, verification, transportation, identity. The same system that buys your lunch can unlock your front door. And in some places, it already does. So the next time you tap your phone and walk away without thinking, remember this: you're not just paying. You're participating in a system that was designed long before smartphones existed. A system built around access, control, and invisible permission. A system that doesn't just respond to you, it recognizes you. And once a system learns to recognize you, it never really forgets.